What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Inking Out Loud. I'm your host, Rob Santos, and I'm joined by my co-host, Drew McCaffrey.
How's it going, everybody?
And today we're going to be wrapping up the 9th volume of The Wheel of Time, Winter's Heart. So, without much further ado, take it away, Drew. Recap the ending of this book.
Yeah, so where we left off last time, we were back with Matt in Abu Dar, where he is sort of getting his bearings again after recovering from his injury when the Shanshan attacked. He's dealing with Satal Anan and Jolene and Aludra and Tuan and Tylin and all the women in his life. But he basically decides, he owes Teslin because she warned him, about Elida, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna rescue her. I'm gonna rescue Jolene. I'm gonna get her out of Abu Dar, and he kind of gets recruited as well by Eginin and Bail Doman, who are also trying to get out of Abu Dar because they realize they're in some trouble.
You're in a predicament, yeah.
Yeah, and it all comes together. Matt frees the Athan Mier Damane and gets, Edazina, Jolene, and Teslin, out, along with 3 Suldam, including Bethamin. And on the way out, he runs into Tuan, and he is forced to kidnap her, essentially, and also inadvertently starts to marry her. And then meanwhile, back with Rand, he is in Farmatting, where he's kind of playing a game of cat and mouse with the renegade Ashaman who tried to kill him at the end of Path of Daggers. And he dispatches some of them, Padan Fane dispatches more of them. Rand gets briefly imprisoned again before Cadswain gets him out. Rand takes Cadswain and all of her Aes Sedai and Ashaman that she brought with, and they go to Shadar Logoth and cleanse Saidin. And that's where the book ends.
Yeah, that's where the book ends. And to have where the episode begins, normally at this point I'd have a whole bunch of style points to discuss, but I'm going to be honest and say that this week, for the first time, I actually didn't write anything down about style. Or if I did, my points are so closely related to character points that I just included all of my style points for this week pretty much in my character section. So I also have a bit about style in my closing. Sorry, go ahead.
I do have one kind of style point that I want to talk about, and that is that final chapter with the Choydan Call and how, once again, we see Robert Jordan using point of view to such great effect, where he's jumping around in these short little segments, going from character to character, showing us different, theaters of this ongoing conflict around Rand, where, it would be so easy to try as an author to write that from Rand's point of view, but I don't think it would be as effective as what Robert Jordan did, where he had what was the number, 10 or 11 different points of view in one chapter.
Oh, I'm sure it was even more than that.
We got Demandred, we have Sindane, we have
Moradin,
Moghedian, we have Osangar. We have Cadswain, of course. Eben Hopwill. We got people on both sides of this conflict. That just all this craziness going on, and that sort of staccato point of view structure, combined with the nature of the conflict, where it's all one power stuff. It makes for this really hectic, really tense, climactic scene. And I loved that. Yeah,
I'm going to definitely be elaborating a lot on that for my closing thoughts for today. As well as with my my beer selection for today. But I'm kind of excited to dive into our characters. Is there anything else style worthy that you want to discuss right now? Or are you ready to hike up our socks and get stepping?
Yeah, let's kick it off with characters.
Okay, so Rand, right? Naturally, good place to start.
Yeah.
Okay, so we get an ominous moment for Rand's outlook on the future in this half of this book. The revelation from Min that Olivia is somehow going to help Rand die. Not a very positive thing to hear for somebody who's rapidly descending into madness already. But a big moment for Rand, though, that I was cheering for him at this point in the book was how thoroughly satisfying it was to watch him put Alana in her place, finally. you know.
Yeah.
I've now got this massive hatred for Alana, and this hatred that I really don't recall having previously, at least not to this extent that I'm starting to hate her now. Like, she tried to slap Rand, to slap him for the offense of letting someone else bond him. Like, this might be the single most irrational, hypocritical word or action that we ever get from any character at any point in the entirety of the series. And I'm looking directly at you, Egwene, including Egwene. Like, in that moment, this time, a small part of me wished that Rand could just bale fire her ass. It was beyond maddening, listening to that twisted perversion of anything resembling logic. I just wrote down 2 thumbs, pardon me, 2 thumbs way down and 1 middle finger way up for Alana. What about you, dude?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have as visceral a reaction to Alana as you do, but that particular scene was infuriating when she...
Infuriating, yes.
Storms in, and... I mean, she's just so unstable at this point. You know, we see how emotionally volatile she is going into Ebudar, you know, how impatient, how, like...
impetuous.
Like, it almost seems like for her mental
Naive.
stability, she needs to be with Rand, and it's like it's so ridiculous that that's the case for her. This is a woman who doesn't know Rand at all. She's met him like, you know, just a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
The first time she ever met him, she just like, you know,
Mind raped
against
him
his will. Like,
yeah.
It's and yet she treats the bond and treats him as something very familiar and something very intimate, like as if she knows him, and she does not know him. And it is this like presumptuous thing that is emblematic of a lot of Aes Sedai in this series. There's just an inherent presumption to how so many Aes Sedai interact with the world around them, and this, I think, is like the peak of that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And actually following up on that, I do want to ask one question that just occurred to me while you were talking there, Drew. I want to know how exactly it was that this woman, Alana Mosvanti, somehow managed to pass the test for the shawl.
Yeah.
How did she manage that?
That is like a really good question. I think it's worth pointing out that we see other Aes Sedai over the course of the series lose their composure and like lose their nerve, and I think that's really what happened with her. I think if we had seen her, you know, before this, a lot more before, you know, she lost a warder and before she bonded Rand, and like she became very unstable over the course of the series, and I think if we saw her, say, like 5 years earlier, she would have seemed like a very different
No,
woman.
I would say that she actually started out unstable. She just got more and more so as she went along. I mean, the first time we met her was in the Two Rivers, I think, from Perrin's point of view.
Yeah, and that was after her warder died.
Oh, okay, I suppose there's some leeway to be granted for that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there was always like a little bit of this like fire in her.
Oh yeah, she's described
but
that
it was
way.
something that she could handle, and after Owen dies, she really loses that grip on herself.
Yeah, I suppose.
And I think it's a similar thing to what happens with Shamarin in a couple of books here, the Aes Sedai, whom Elida makes an example of.
Yeah.
And you know, she breaks her nerve, and she becomes just like a total like weeping, you know, ineffectual person. And I'm not saying that Alana is quite at that level, but I think she did lose her nerve. She lost her ability to maintain her composure after Owen was killed, and she became even more unstable when she bonded Rand.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. And I'm really cognizant of the fact that right now I started this, you know, talking about Rand, but we ended up going on a tangent about Alana. I kind of want to bring it back to Rand here and say that another really cool moment for Rand, and for us as a reader, was finally starting to see him master this art of blending in with the crowd, as we saw him do in Farmading. It's cool to consider like what the reaction of those others would be in that crowd if the street vendor, for example, selling these greasy-ass meat pies, realized that the tall, black-haired man in front of him juggling one from hand to hand was actually Rand al'Thor, the Dragon Reborn. He who comes with the dawn, Shadow Killer, the Kuramor, Champion of the Light and Lord of the Morning. This blissful ignorance that they all have, it was just So perfect, man.
Yeah, and totally unrelated or mostly unrelated. For some reason, that particular moment, like on Blue Carp Street, when Rand buys the meat pie and he's like juggling it, and like just the description of that has always stuck in my head.
Yes, yes. I remember there was such, again, you just use this word and I'll use it again, visceral. This moment I have from my childhood of reading that scene and just how surreal it was to see Rand actually, like you just said, that description of him on a word-by-word basis, juggling it from hand to hand, and like, Jordan makes care to describe the grease going down his chin, right? Just kind of humanizes the Dragon Reborn in a way that we really haven't seen up to this point. It was really well done.
Yeah. But, it kind of serves as a little bit of a counterpoint to the other stuff that he does in formatting, because it's formatting by nature has to, like, bring Rand down to, like, a more normal level because he can't channel there. But even still, everything he does is of such import and of such just an extraordinary nature, between dealing with Thane and his illusions and dueling, multiple of the renegade Ashaman in the alley, and then being arrested and locked in a box again. That's a major moment for Rand, where it shows us just how unstable he is and how vulnerable mentally and emotionally he is since Dumai's Wells.
Yeah, and it's an often overlooked part, I think, in the development of the character that is Rand al'Thor, especially going along these path of this man that I'm referring to this whole time as Dark Rand, First how... Sorry, go ahead. Or you said, I thought you said,
Yeah.
No, but like we have this increasing mantra throughout the series that at first he has to become as hard as stone, and then he has to become as hard as steel, and now after this, he has to be Quendiar.
Yep.
Right. It's just like, oh man, it's worse and worse as it goes along. But I also want to discuss this whole Blue Carp Street sequence. I wanted to ask you, Drew, what was it like your first time reading this scene as a young man? What was your impression?
So I actually remember reading this scene the first time pretty vividly.
Yeah.
And I was like on the edge of my seat the whole time. I as soon as I knew that Torum Rioton was involved, I was like, oh yes, I need to see him get his comeuppance. Like I hated Torum Rioton.
Really? It was Torum Rioton that did it for you?
Ever since the friendly duel, with the practice swords in the Rebel
How about some sport, brother?
And when the bubble of evil hit and Rand turns to look and see if he can save this Aes Sedai who's being ripped apart by the fog, and Torum Rioton has this kind of dirty blow and hits Rand in the side right over his previous wounds. I always just saw Torum Rioton as this underhanded, scummy, and then of course when we found out that he's hanging around with Padan Fain.
Yeah, exactly. We found that out actually beforehand, didn't we?
Yeah. Well, because
he's immediately beforehand. He's in the camp.
He's in the tent. Yeah. He's in the tent right there. Rand makes eye contact with him. But that in the aftermath, Rioton went with Padan Fain, and we see him in this scene where he's a shell of himself, where he's dirty and unkempt, and even though he's this lord, this powerful lord, and then the land just wrecks him as he deserves.
Oh, I wouldn't say land wrecks him. I mean, Torum Rioton was a blade master, and as we see, he did manage to bloody Lan Mandragoran. I wouldn't say that land wrecked him.
So I'm gonna point this out with Lan. Lan gets bloodied a lot. Most of the blade master duels we see him in, he takes wounds.
Yeah, it's usually against several Trollocs and or Murdral at the same time, not in a one-on-one.
No, every time we see him fight a blade master, he is bloodied.
Okay, well I guess you could say that anybody who qualifies for blade master,
Demandred bloodies him.
Yeah, but I mean that's because they are also blade masters, which means they're a lot. I mean, Lan is the best without question.
Yeah,
but to qualify for blade master, you have to be on his level at least. So to say that he wrecked Torum Rioton,
I'd say they were only in there for a couple of minutes.
That's all it takes.
That was a very quick.
That's all it takes.
That was a very quick duel.
Yeah, I bet you Rand's duel with Turak was about the same. I don't know.
See, I didn't get that impression with Rand, and certainly not with like Galad and Valda, for instance.
Oh, Galat and
But
Valda. Oh, I can't wait till we get to discuss that one in depth.
yeah,
Oof.
but yeah, like it was just great to see Ryoton finally go down.
Get his comeuppance.
I do remember being frustrated that Fane got away again.
Oh my
You know, it
god,
was
so
like-
much agreement.
Although this was also a scene when I realized, kind of thinking back, the first time through, where I was like, oh, Fane, okay, so the flies and that whole thing in the village, that was Fane
What?
back
this,
in the Great Hunt.
This made you think of that?
Because in this scene, Rand walks in and there's another illusion, another trap based around an illusion.
Hold on, what is this illusion? The bodies?
When Rand and
Yeah.
Lan drop in,
Yeah.
the door opens and like the two Ashaman walk in, but that's an illusion. Their bodies are actually dead and like rotting from the Shatter Logoth taint right over in the corner.
Yeah, I remember seeing the description of the bodies right away. I don't remember the illusion of the two men. I thought that was actually real. Of course, then again, they would have been able to... No, never mind, actually. Yeah, okay, I'm just realizing that I was not following along the scene very well. That makes sense.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find
No, I totally believe you.
the description, because it is striking.
We know that
I
he killed
remember
Kisman
I
in the
remembered it.
streets.
Yeah. All right.
But the last two that Rand had yet to kill were in the note that Fane left, and those were the two bodies that Rand and Lan discovered as they dropped down from the ceiling, yes?
Yeah. Yeah. So they find them first, and that's like why Rand manages to, like to get around
I guess,
it.
yeah, no, I guess why that confuses me is the fact that I assumed the flies in the vision in the trap in the Great Hunt were real, because Rand can, like, feel them, like, crawling into his nose and crawling down his mouth and into his lungs and shit like that.
Yeah, so it's Padan Fane is like fighting Rand already, and Fane like reaches out a hand.
What? He casts
And,
an illusion like a light weaver?
Yeah, so the line is here, like, I want to know who's killing him, Fane whined petulantly. He was glaring straight at Rand, but seemed to be talking to himself. I want him to know, but if he's dead, then he will stop haunting my dreams. Yes, he will stop him. Yes, he will stop then. With a smile, he raised his free hand. Torval and Gedwin came up the stairs with their cloaks over their arms. I say we aren't going near him until I know where the others are, Gedwin growled. The Mihail will kill us if... Without thought, Rand twisted his wrists in cutting the wind and immediately followed with unfolding the fan. The illusion of dead men come back to life vanished, and Fane leapt back with a shriek.
Okay. See, for some reason, where my brain got off the highway there was that Fane raising his hand there was just to stab Rand with the dagger, and those two happen to come up at the wrong time, and Rand just like unfolds the fan and beheads the both of them. I didn't stop to think that their two bodies are obviously already dead upstairs. I never stopped to consider that. I thought it was like, oh yeah, maybe there's two more Ashaman in this city that need to be killed, that need to get got. But no, you're right. I don't know why, after all this time and reading this as many times as I haven't actually realized that was an illusion. Interesting. That might have been almost like a lore-worthy... No, actually, it's not a lore-worthy segment, because I was just being a dumbass and not reading the book.
Yeah, because it does use the word illusion.
Yeah,
right?
and we're still on our Rand discussion, aren't we? I actually have my impressions about this whole Blue Carp sequence to get out of the way as well.
Okay,
Sorry.
yeah, go for it.
Just had to burp there for a bit because this beer is delicious. So for me, this whole Blue Carp Street sequence, it stood out to me because it ended up later defining a word that I came to learn. And that word is surreal. When I first heard a definition for the word surreal, I was like 7th or 8th grade. I was like 11 or 12 years old. And my immediate thought was like, oh, okay, so Rand didn't land on the rooftops of Farmatting. That was surreal. You know, what a roller coaster of a ride that this chapter was. Like, the way Jordan styles this entire chapter in this sort of detached, cold, sort of third person as these two guys physically hunt down blacklisted Ashaman, you know, running into Fane, Lan dueling Torm Ryoton, Rand fending off Fane and looking as if he finally might get to finish this job that had been building up for so long. It felt like what was going to be the height of the novel. And then came the cleansing.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So, yeah, and that pretty much wraps up all of my Rand points for now, but I'll have a ton going forward, I promise.
Yeah. So I want to stick with the Farmatting group here.
Okay.
And I want to talk just briefly about Cadsuane and Varen. because there is a very interesting scene in this section.
Yes.
Where we see
Yes.
Varen preparing to poison Cadsuane.
I have a
and
miscellaneous
stays
point
her
about this
hand.
exact scene. I'm glad you're bringing it up now, though.
Yeah, it's, you know, in retrospect, like I remember reading it the first time and being so confused about what Varen's deal was. But in retrospect, it seems so obvious here. Like, of course, Varen was prepared to kill Cadsuane because she thought Cadsuane was possibly black, and that she thought Cadsuane was working against Rand. But when she found out that Cadsuane was working to teach Rand laughter and tears again, and has this like pact with Soralia, you know, like to humanize Rand again, she's like, okay, no, she's doing the right thing. I'm not going to kill her.
Yeah, Cadsuane won over Varen just like she won over me. With that idea, the idea to teach the Dragon Reborn laughter and tears. It was something like I mentioned before. It came so far out of left field as a theme for this book and the development of the character that is Rand al'Thor. It is so unexpected that and so just like seemingly brilliant at the time that I was immediately on board, and I can see why it immediately persuaded Varen as well. And on the subject of this exact scene, that, you know, that little vial that she tucked away, that was a little detail that I'm not sure. I'm really not sure how I didn't notice beforehand, because I didn't notice beforehand. But slipping away that little vial after serving the tea to Cadsuane, especially considering how many times I've read this scene, that line that Varen has that ends this scene, I've read so many times. Do you take honey? I can never remember.
Yeah.
Like, that's just for some reason or other, and I can't explain why, that line as a Varen line sticks out to me so much, and for some reason that I can't fathom, I never noticed the little detail of the vial she tucked away before asking that question. And now, knowing what I know with the context that I currently have, it was pretty neat. And I hurriedly whipped out my phone to write that point down as soon as I noticed it.
Yeah, and so that line as well is another one of these signifiers that I think we're supposed to walk away with the impression that, with our knowledge of Varen's ultimate plot line here, character arc, is that was a lie. She did know. And she's, you know...
She knows about the honey preference?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
Like, that was just the impression that I got on rereads. That was
interesting.
Like, that was just her putting up a pretense of, you know, being scatterbrained as she does, and lying and using it as an excuse to dilly-dally over the tea.
Okay, the dilly-dallying makes it, strike home a little more. I can see that, yeah. Who do we want to jump onto next? Should we jump into Matt?
I mean, I think we should. He's the only other, like, really major character that I have points about.
Yeah, let's do it. I only have 2 points about Matt. I want to say that the entire escape from Abu Dar sequence was just so tragically amusing from Matt's point of view. You know, of course he laid down like a reasonable, surprisingly clever plan of escape. And of course, as a Taviran, it just all goes horribly wrong in all the right ways. I thought it was pretty cool, man. What about you?
Yeah, I absolutely adore the Matt sequence in this book. And a big part of it is I love... It really starts around here and goes forward through, like, Knife of Dreams. There's this section of the series where we get a lot of scenes of other people realizing how competent Matt is. And we get these little bits with Aegianin and Domon in this book, and we're going to see more with, like, Seleucia and Tuon in the next couple books. And while it is a lot of fun to be in Matt's head, I almost feel like it's more fun when we are in somebody else's head watching Matt.
I can see that. Yeah. You know, I also wanted to ask how heartbreaking it was to read the scene where Matt is tying up a willing Tylan so that he can flee the city. You know, like, even for those who are not fans...
I was not heartbroken
Yeah,
at
okay,
all.
see, that's where I'm going next with this. Even for those who are not fans of the Queen of Altara, it's just knowing what this memory is going to do to Matt in the future. That's what really makes it hit hard for me. You know, it's still tough to get through for that reason.
This was one point, and, you know, goes into a little bit into the next book when Matt gets the news of Tylan.
Mm-hmm.
I never understood, like, from the get-go, I never understood why Matt was so sad about it.
Of course, because he feels responsible.
She abused you.
He tied her up, so he feels responsible. It's not that he really cared about her so much. It's that he just feels like he left a woman helpless against that beast.
I think they're really, I'll leave that point for Crossroads of Twilight.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, even if she had like 50 defenders with her at the moment, like she still would have died. But he's still Matt Cawthon being Matt Cawthon, of course, leaving her tied up is going to, punish himself emotionally for what he assumes he did to Tylan.
But I mean, to me, the greater emotional impact in these chapters was Matt's interaction with the Windfinders, and his innate goodness, where he chooses to free them, even though he knows that by doing so he could be screwing himself over and screwing he screwing up his plans. Like he just cannot stand by and let this this abuse. And I think it's a counterpoint to what's happening with Tylan, and Matt is probably not like conscious of how he's sort of acting in opposition to the way Tylan treated him, but he is.
Yeah.
Like he is being the decent person and treating people who are being abused and held in captivity with decency and respect and with like generosity, whereas everything about his relationship with Tylan is selfishly motivated on Tylan's part.
Yeah. Well, that's why we love him, and that's why Matt is a main character in the Wheel of Time, because innately he is good.
Yeah.
And that's why he's one of my favorites.
Love it. Like I really love these Matt chapters in Winter's Heart.
Yeah, that wraps up everything I have to say about Matt for now. I'm sure I'm going to have a lot more in Crossroads of Twilight and Knife of Dreams. I do still have Nynaeve and Elaine left to discuss as far as my character points go. Do you have a preferential starting point?
Let's start with Elaine.
Elaine,
we didn't get a lot of her in this section, but we did have a couple of really fun chapters.
Yeah, no, we definitely did.
I always enjoy reading the To Surprise Kings and Queens, where she goes out to the Borderlander camp and there's all of this like tension in the air, and they're like finding out, there are 13 Aes Sedai in the camp, and the Borderlanders are trying to hide the fact that the Aes Sedai are there, and Elaine's like, I'm not meeting with you as the Queen of Andor or even the Daughter Heir, I'm meeting with you as an Aes Sedai, and kind of throwing her weight around. And I think that's a character move that she would not have been able to do did she not have the experiences in Ebu Dar, where she had that recognition and respect from the other Aes Sedai, where she could finally like publicly move around as a real Aes Sedai, where we get that. We talked about the two scenes in A Crown of Swords where she gets her due from
the kinswomen,
like Merilil, and then
first
she
the
goes
Aes
in
Sedai,
and we get that,
and then
we get that line, I fear you must address yourself to Elaine Sedai. Like,
so much win.
And so that was sort of like a character growth moment that builds the foundation and allows Elaine to go out and have the confidence to meet with 4 kings and queens in an army of 200,000 soldiers.
Yeah.
As an Aes Sedai and not as the Daughter Heir of Andor.
Yeah.
Or the, presumptuous Queen of Andor.
Yeah.
Like, she's doing it independently of her birthright political station.
She got to flex. That's what she got. It's not so much a point about Elaine as it was just something revealed during her viewpoint, something you just briefly touched on there, Drew. But I hadn't before realized just how huge this massed armies of the Borderlanders were. Like you just said, over 200,000 soldiers from, like, what is it, 4 nations?
Yep.
Shinar, Arafel, Kandor, and Salbea, right?
Yeah.
Like, what an intimidating front.
we had a discussion. I don't remember which episode it was, but it was earlier, like
I want to
Shadow
say
Rising or Fires of Heaven.
Fires of Heaven Part
about
3.
the
This place,
size
this day?
of the Shi'Naran army
Oh,
at
Shi'Nars.
Tarwin's Gap.
Oh, yeah, I
and
know.
how that must have been like about 100,000 Shi'Narans, because
I think that was
like,
in
a
Eye
lot
of the
them
World Part
died
2.
there. And no, well, so we talked about it later.
No, I think we talked about it in Eye of the World Part 2. I realized it happened at the end of Eye of the World, but I think I brought it up in the Eye of the World Part
No.
2 because you said something about 100,000 soldiers, and I was like, what?
I think
No.
it was Fires of Heaven, because we were talking about how the
Okay.
Battle of Kyrian was
Ooh,
the
that's a
first
good point.
large-scale army, like a six-figure army.
No, that's-
and I was
that's-
like, no, Tarwin's
Yep.
Gap, we saw like 100,000 Shi'Narans, because they lost a lot there, and
that's
they still
actually
had
ringing a bell,
50,000
yeah.
soldiers to send south in this. Like, this is like a pretty substantial, stripping of the might of the Borderlands, where we'll see it a little more later in like Towers of Midnight when we get to Maradon, and how few soldiers they left behind across the Borderlands, which was a risky move.
It definitely was, and it feels a little irresponsible, honestly, knowing what we know about the Borderlanders and how much they have defended the border of the Blight. I just, I don't know. All of this for what boils down to a question. Ultimately, that's what it boils down to. As far as we're talking about Elaine here, I still have a couple small points about Elaine that I just want to mention very briefly. I was a little disappointed, and I still am a little disappointed that we don't get to see the actual moment where Elaine learns that she's going to be a mother. Like, I think that would have been, out of all characters in this series, particularly magical, I think, like, from the point of Elaine. Right?
That's a good point. I think that's, it's not something I'd really thought about before, but I agree with you. I think that would have been a really,
How heartwarming would that
like
have
a
been
touching moment
to see Elaine learn, that she's going to bear Rand's children.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then again,
I would have liked that. That's a good point.
We get this disturbing context, though, on these scenes, to flip that, on the flip side, to see her openly flirting with Doylin Millar. I can see where she comes from, and the logic that she puts forth, it's hard to dispute. She doesn't want anyone to know that these are Rand's babies, they're going to be targets, yada yada. Makes sense, but objectively speaking, horrifying. Ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Nasty. So, that wraps up my points on Elaine.
Yeah. So my last Elaine point, though, was to this theme of, like, her confidence building and her kind of power move to go out and deal with the rulers as Elaine Sedai of the Green Aja, and, like, hitting this sort of, like, political maneuvering high, and coming back and finding out there are 4 armies approaching Camelin. We're about to be besieged.
And
like,
in all of that, Elaine sees an opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is the last of the Elaine that we get in this book. And I think this is a trend that's growing, where Robert Jordan likes, in this segment of the series, likes building us up to a point where he's like, all right, some real carnage is going to go down, and then cutting away for the rest of the book. So, like, Path of Daggers, we build up to, like, the gateway opened and the armies are going through to besiege Tarvalon, and then book's over. And then here, Elaine, we build up to all of her political maneuvering, and she gets back to Camelin, like, boom, we're getting besieged. No more Elaine for the rest of the book. Like,
Yeah.
It's something that I could see people getting very frustrated with, and I remember, I wouldn't quite call it frustration, but I remember being, like, anxious about it.
Right.
Like, just wanting to know more, wanting so badly to find out what's going to happen. But as I'm reading through this time, of course I don't have to wait between books, and I'm, like, digging in more, and, performing more of, like, a literary analysis on things. I really appreciate this literary device that Robert Jordan is using. Like, it is a cliffhanger, but it's a very particular kind of cliffhanger.
Now,
and I enjoy it.
Would it have been as frustrating, as you put it, originally, before you had, the appreciation for it in the context? Would it have been as frustrating if it had been put, for example, closer to the end of the narrative, rather than, like, what is it, like 6, 7, 8 chapters at least before the actual very, very end. So you leave off at this point thinking, okay, we might get a little more from Elaine. But then again, you see that everything going forward is Matt Rand, right? Like, if this had been like the second last chapter, the third last chapter, would it have, like, would you have felt a little more closure at least for this part of the book?
Possibly, yeah.
Perhaps.
I could see that. I mean, because, so that chapter that's chapter 27. So we've got
Oh, 27? I would have figured like 23, 24. Yeah. Oh, I'm already off then.
There were 8 more chapters after...
Oh, no, I nailed it then.
To surprise Queens and Kings. Yeah, and then I guess, maybe this goes back to a style point. There is no epilogue in this book.
Yeah.
It just ends with the Choyden Call.
Yeah.
And it once again has this like little bit at the end that I always like to draw back to the myths in Blade of Taishal.
Right. Where he pulls out into this omniscient sort of second person almost.
Exactly. Like it starts with night fell on the hilltop, the wind blew dust across the fragments of what had once been a Terangreal. Below lay the tomb of Shadar Logoth, open to give the world hope. And on distant Tremalking, the word began to spread that the time of illusions was at an end.
Chills.
Yeah. Yeah, so to your point, though, with, like, Elaine, I wouldn't say there was, like, that much of an issue. I think maybe it would have been alleviated a little bit had she had a chapter closer to the end of the book, but it's those 8 chapters after her last chapter are so great that you kind of just forget about.
Yeah, you do.
Like, you could just get sucked right back into Matt and Ebu Dar and the escape, and then right into Rand and Farmatting and the cleansing. And so
yeah,
and knowing what we do now about how, like, there's not just like a battle about to happen at Camelin, that it is going to be a siege for a few weeks. If Robert Jordan had chosen to maybe like have some sparking, inciting incident that resulted in a pitched battle at Camelin, I could have seen like another like climactic chapter in this book for Elaine. Add another 5,000-6,000 words to this book. But I can't really blame him for what he did, because Elaine's character arc wasn't really wasn't really prepared for her to assume the throne quite yet.
Fair point.
Yeah.
I want to briefly talk about Nynaeve. I just have one thing I want to highlight with Nynaeve and her points of view from this Blue Carp Street sequence. I want to say I love Nynaeve. I love how her loyalty is to Rand. She never gives us a reason to think otherwise. Like, all of our other characters at this point, they have duties that they make clear are of near or equal importance to their loyalty to Rand al'Thor. Like, don't even get me started on Perrin. Oh my god. But the entire Blue Carp Street sequence shows that Nynaeve is willing to listen to Rand, occasionally to take an order, and to do both without resenting him for it. Like, she doesn't seem to think like the others do, that her status as a person is somehow in jeopardy because she's taking orders from a walking penis. She's careful, she's thoughtful, she's free from anything even resembling guile or duplicity. Like, she clearly goes along with a plan because she trusts him. And I just want to say I love Nynaeve now. I love her.
Yeah, all of her decision making in this book is just a case in point of her loyalty to Rand and to the Two Rivers,
and her faith in Rand.
Like, it's her decision to just say, like, you need me more than Elaine does. I'm gonna just leave Elaine.
And in some ways, she feels like the least Aes Sedai out of all Aes Sedai for that reason.
And that's driven home when we see her dealing with Cadsuane in this, where we know that Nynaeve is deserving of the title Aes Sedai, even if she doesn't align, sort of like morally maybe not morally, she doesn't align with the Aes Sedai mentality. And Cadsuane also doesn't. So it's this weird, like, they're both part of this institution, but they're both outliers, you know, and so they strike sparks because they're both outliers, and we have once again this like need for Nynaeve to earn respect from an Aes Sedai that Elaine has already achieved. Now Nynaeve has to do that. But she has to do it with Cadsuane, who's like way more difficult to handle than Merilil or, you know, Carianne or Adelius and Vandene. Like, it's a totally different animal, but it's an animal that Nynaeve can handle.
And it really says something about the character of Cadsuane that Nynaeve has to struggle just as hard or harder to earn the respect of Cadsuane than Elaine had to work in Crown of Swords to earn the respect of all of those various Aes Sedai combined.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it makes sense with Cadsuane, knowing what we learn about her in this book, like how she earned the Paralis net, you know, her ornaments, how like she had this non-traditional training period, and you know, very, very difficult, harder than what the White Tower does, and really idiosyncratic. And so Nynaeve, of course, Cadsuane sees her potential, and so she's going to treat Nynaeve the way she was treated by Norla. Like, pushing Nynaeve.
I would love to see more of Norla.
Yeah, I will say...
excellent spin-off material.
The very first entry in the Companion that I looked up was Norla.
Really?
When that came out.
Awesome.
I was disappointed in how little was in there.
I think I remember being
wanted
a little disappointed in that same. So that wraps up all of my character style points, or character points to discuss. I do have a few miscellaneous points, and we do have some questions from listeners to get to as well. Do you want to dive into those? Do you have any any lore segment, or should we do that after?
So I don't really have much like lore stuff. This is a pretty straightforward, you know, segment. Everything's pretty much explained in the books. Like in the book itself for this, so I didn't have anything that leapt out at me when I was reading through it where I was like, oh, this is a good thing for me to like explain. Okay.
So I'm just going to go through my miscellaneous impressions, and then we're going to get to the 2 listener questions that we have, plus the 1 questioner that I have. Sound good?
Okay.
Okay. So starting off as a casual observation, Hareen Din Togara 2 wins. What a petulant little child. Holy shit. She is annoying.
Yeah. Man, the Sea Folk are just a chore.
Yeah. Which one of the Aes Sedai
I like Shallan.
were we getting her from? Like, whose point of view were we in when we were getting all of that whining from Hareen?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Like, whose point of view were we in when Hareen was doing her thing and bitching at her finest? It was one of the Aes Sedai that we were in one of the Aes Sedai's heads, I think, at that point.
When they're going into Farmatic?
Yes, and Hareen is whining about Cadsuane treating her like a...
It's Shallan, her sister.
Oh.
The Windfinder.
Oh, I thought it was an Aes Sedai. It was actually one of the Sea Folk.
Yeah.
Gotcha,
yeah,
okay.
When they're going into... It's like... man.
Oh, yeah, Shallan is right. You know, that reminds me. Okay, I remember now, because it sounded obviously a lot like Sanderson's. Shallan, yeah.
Oh, yeah, Shalon instead of...
yeah. The way Sanderson does.
Yeah.
Particularly winning Wheel of Time phrase, though, that stuck out to me this time. I don't recall actually reading it before, but it's, you know, it made me chuckle a little bit this time. Women are a maze through briars in the night, and even they do not know the way. You know, in terms of sheer aesthetic alone, that was an awesome line.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not necessarily saying I agree with it. I'm just saying that it stands out, right?
Yeah. I would agree with that. There are a lot of like these little, you know, turns of phrase that he, like, oh man, what's the word I'm looking for?
He's got a flair for it.
Not like fables, but, you know, just like little like sage wisdom for in-world like type things. I don't remember the word that I'm looking for, But yeah, no, Hareen is obnoxious, but I do like Shallan. She has, of all the sea folk, she has a lack of self-assurance that is just refreshing. Because
Refreshing
all the
from
other
a sea
folk are
folk. I see
so
what you did there.
high and mighty. They're so
Intentionally
just
otherwise.
ugh. and they don't have cause to be. They're not in their prime environment. They're not in positions of power, but yet they act like they are. And
Petulant.
Shallan is not. And
Yeah.
so
I'd say
she
Talon
has
is
this
another one. So
uncertainty.
Talon is also a lot like that. She has a lot of self-awareness. She's willing to abase herself in front of Nynaeve for possible acceptance into the White Tower. Like, that's pretty cool. Knowing what she's capable
but
of
she's,
too.
Like, she's an apprentice, though. You know, she's not
suppose.
one of these windfinders or wave mistresses.
But she's an apprentice for a pretty high position.
Yes.
So
Yeah. I did like Talon. I wish we had like a more satisfying conclusion for her character, but we can get into that more, you know, in the later books.
Definitely.
But yeah, do you have any other miscellaneous points?
Yep. Just 2 more. Oh, 3 more. Oh, sorry, 4 more. There's such an awesome moment for Olivia as the cleansing starts. Like, she's the only one apparently not linked to anyone else.
Yeah.
So that we have so this is what we have. We have Maurice linked with Narishma and Kalendor, and I think Elsa was in on that circle as well.
And Elsa, yep.
And you know, as all these others are forming up, they're linking, they're whipping out their Angreal, but Olivia just embraces the source and strolls away to the north. No shit's given. Yeah. That was pretty cool. That was pretty cool, and that was pretty badass, and I was totally for it when I came to that. That was awesome. And I also thought it was pretty badass to see Narishma with Kalendor at the beginning of this sequence. Mm-hmm. I actually wrote, why am I psyched about this now? Like, I think maybe it's because Rand has the Shoid and Cal in hand, so it's probably fine, even though I totally trusted Narishma, listen to me, Narishma at this point. Mm-hmm. But I also know that Kalendor is also, you know, not to be trusted. It's a little sketchy, so I guess maybe that's why I'm not. Before I wasn't as cool. In Path of Daggers, I made a very clear point of this. I was a little skeptical about Narishma wielding Kalendor, but in this sequence, I was so on board. I was so ready to see.
Linked with 2 women, which is what we know is what makes it safe to use.
Okay, yeah, that's true. I hadn't considered that, actually.
Yeah.
And that led me to my next thought. Now, wouldn't it be nice if we also had power ratings for Angreal and Saw Angreal?
Yes.
And if we did, what would our units be? Would they be like measured in moiraines? Would they be measured in Daigions as like a small base unit, or even like more gazes as you want to go as small and accurate as possible? Is it
argument and debate like in like the really hardcore theory forums like on what?
Oh, that's cool. I haven't seen this.
Stuff, like the amount of debate that has gone on over the last 20 years about like how to, like, if you're trying to quantify the amount of power that these, or rank, you know, power users, what is an Angreal or a Sangreal, and how does it interact with that power scale? Like, is it a multiplier? Is it a geometric? Like, is it an exponential?
Is it like linear or exponential? You know, exactly. A rate of accelerated returns. What's the dividing line between Angreal and Sangreal?
Yeah, and that was a really, really big debate that raged for a while. I remember like people arguing that it was like Angreal, like just they had like some, I don't remember exact quotes or anything, but they had some textual evidence that indicated that possibly Angreal were something that gave you like just like a direct, concrete amount added on, you know. Whereas like Sangreal were multipliers, where like Moiraine wielding the bracelet, Vora Sangreal would not like you'd have Moiraine at like X level and Egwene at Y level. The amount of boost Moiraine would get from using Vora Sangreal would be less than the amount of boost Egwene got from it.
Because it multiplies on top of her.
Yeah.
It's like Super Saiyan.
Strength. Yeah. And so, like,
that's one of the nerdiest fucking things I've ever said in my life.
Oh, yeah. No. But we just, like, we don't really know. We do not know. And so...
It's fun to talk about, though. It's fun to discuss and think about.
It is, yeah. So, like, the idea of, like, you know, Rand using Kalendor versus Narishma using Kalendor, you know, maybe he's not getting quite as much of this like huge power boost that Rand got.
And that's not even
But we don't know.
discussing like the strength of the channelers that went into creating the Sangreal or Angreal in the first place. Of course, I think it's actually easier to say that stronger channelers creating a Sangreal would be able to accomplish it with fewer individuals than weaker channelers.
Well, and that was another theory, was that like
That's awesome,
possibly
though.
what makes an Angreal or a Sangreal like strong at various points is how strong was the Aes Sedai
And the
who made
seed.
it.
Yeah.
Like, is it a direct correlation, like 1-to-1 to the strength of the Aes Sedai who made it? Because we know when you make an Aes Sedai, you're like drained of the power,
And
you
they
can't
won't be able
channel for a
to they
while.
won't be able to channel for weeks afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what Rand
So-
warns Egwene about on A Memory of Light, as he gives her
Right.
the seed.
Yeah. So maybe we did get into some like hardcore lore there.
I guess we did. I only have one more miscellaneous thought, and then we have 2 questions from listeners.
Okay.
My last thought is, R.I.P. Rip Evan Hopwell went down with honor.
Dude,
My man.
Raise a glass, man.
Yeah, I will. I just finished the beer, so I guess I'll drink some water in honor of Evan Hopwell. But
I was going to bring up Eben Hopwell in my closing
Yeah,
thoughts. So
he
yeah,
couldn't. He
that's-
couldn't fight back with the one power, so he did the only thing he could against a woman that was channeling Saidin, and drew
Yep.
his sword and died in defense.
Remember
of
his name.
Aes Sedai. Evan Hopwell, this is for you, my man.
Yeah.
Oh, refreshing.
Eben was always one of my favorite Ashaman, and he went out like such a boss. So
Yeah. So our listener questions are 2 in number. The first of which is from Brandon Stetter. He asks, what are your thoughts on what we saw of Farmatting? Do you think the city should have played a bigger role in the series than we saw?
Ooh. So it is a really interesting city, like geopolitically and magically, because it can so easily occupy its own space independent of everything, and it also presents unique problems for our main characters. I don't think, though, that it needed to be used more. I think we got like it would have felt like too much of a recurring trope if it was used again and again and again as like, oh, this like channeling block. It was used twice
It's already used in the
and
steading.
in different ways.
Yeah.
You know, we got to see it force Rand to like use the sword a bit again, you know, and bring him down to a more normal level and force him to deal with issues from a human perspective rather than a semi-godlike perspective. And then we see it again, you know, with the Borderlander army in the next few books about how they shelter within the Guardian and force Rand, you know, toward that precipice of using the true power. That said, I do think it would have been fun if there had been some way. I mean, I can't think of a good logistic way. But if we had seen all of the characters, like the Two Rivers Five, as still like young, naive, wide-eyed adventurers going to Farmatting early in the series, like that could have been
Really?
fun. But
See,
I don't know if like there would have been any possible satisfying narrative purpose for that. So
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, though, and I'll tell you why. Because I wanted to say, for my answer for this question, I want to say I honestly think leaving it mysterious as it was, like with the bare few details that we got about the Guardians, it kind of lends a whole lot more to this air of mystery that surrounds the breaking of the world. I'm fine with it being left as it is in the narrative, but as an aside, I would also suggest that this is an awesome source of material for like fan fiction or spin-off. Like there's so much fertile ground here, and I wanted to say, go nuts, everybody. Farmatting is ripe for the plucking. Like the
Yeah.
Guardian is fascinating. The fact that it can not only detect both Saidar and Saidin, but can also triangulate their position and also distinguish between one and another based on color. Like, oh, it's so cool. It's just like like the world building aspect in that alone is just breathtaking.
Well, so you kind of hit on where I was going to go next with
Oh,
that,
yeah?
and that is, we know a couple of Aes Sedai from Farmatting, And
we do.
this is something
One
that,
of
like,
which is-
if you want to go and do like a spin-off, what I think would be one of the most compelling.
That's
If
awesome.
you wanted to,
I'm such a
like,
fanboy.
Like a direct spin-off, like origin story.
Yep.
Varen or Cadswain, like, what is it like
so
being
much.
a girl who grows up in Farmatting who can channel? How do you even find out that you can channel?
Oh,
Is it
it's
like
so cool.
you walk outside the the span of the Guardian for the first time when you're like 16, and suddenly you get like this like crazy stuff starts
perhaps-
happening and you get sick? Like how does that happen?
Or
You know?
perhaps she, like a mysterious figure, woman, wanders through the town, and she feels an unexplained kinship towards this woman, and it turns out this woman has the seed of channeling planted in her, and she can feel it. Like,
But we don't even know. Is that something you can sense in a setting?
I would hope so. like that, just that connection between souls, like regardless of the fact that,
I don't know.
I don't know. Then again, they can't even feel the source. They can't even feel the ability to channel inside the Guardian, inside a setting. That's actually interesting. Maybe not. I'm starting to
Yeah.
lean towards not, actually. Our second question, though, is from Christian Hayden, who's asked questions before. What's up, Christian? He asks, what about the inconsistency in Grady and Neald's ability to channel gateways? I know as the whole Philo capture storyline can be rough, but this always kind of bothered me. Might be more for a later book, not sure. It seems weird regardless of how tired they are. I know partly they're impacted by their location and its relative nearness to Ebudar. Also, is this when they begin to tie off the gateways as they get more and more taxed by their efforts? Gateways won't stay open forever, do they? You certainly never see a permanent gateway. They unravel over time, correct?
Yeah, so if you tie off the gateway, they do. We see it with Avienda when Rand and her go to Shang-Chan.
I wonder if
and
Andrel's would last longer.
Where Rand, like, ties off the block to hold the gateway open, and the gateway, like, closes the block. And we also see it, like, later on in as the books go, where you can tie off the gateway, but it will eventually close. I will say at least at this point in the series, I don't have an issue like in Winter's Heart with Grady and Neald's gateways. That is something we can talk about more in like Crossroads of Twilight and into Knife of Dreams and Gathering Storm or Towers of
I was
Midnight,
thinking
really.
the same.
But that is something that would be good to like keep in mind as we read through these next couple of books and sort of try to keep tabs on the wonkiness around Perrin's whole army there. And it is tough, as he says, the timeline with the Perrin and Fael story does sort of occupy its own sphere in these later books, and the only time we get like a really aligned moment, really there are two, and they are when Rand is cleansing Sidene. You have the beacon that we'll see early in Crossroads of Twilight, and then when we have the Bale Scream.
Yeah.
And so it is tough to really justify a lot of the reasoning around that, especially because with the Dream Spike, we don't know when exactly that started up, but that's something we can keep an eye on those little details around the gateways over the next couple of books.
Yeah, and if I were to offer a response, it would honestly just be a rewording of pretty much everything Drew just said. So, the last question is just a question I have for you, Drew. It's going to be pretty simple, I imagine, for you to address. Who is this shadowy figure that we see giving Luke/Usum his orders?
I believe that was Arangar.
Arangar as Halima, or not as Halima, obviously. Like, hold on.
Yeah.
So in disguise, though. Halima is such a attention-seeking person, though.
I do not remember why. Well, we see Arangar masquerading as Samael later on.
Oh. Point. Okay.
I don't remember why. There was something, like the last time I reread Winter's Heart, I specifically remember something jumping out at me and thinking like, oh, that's Arangar. But I don't remember what it was.
I trust your instinct, though. I really do.
For our listeners, if you have any insight on this, comments on our Facebook page when this goes live.
I'm sure we'll get a
I'd be curious
comment
to
or two,
see
yeah.
what you all think. and I'll try to do a little research and figure out why that memory is sticking with me, that it was Arangar.
Cool.
So yeah.
Are you ready to go into closing thoughts before we start the final draft?
Well, we have to do our 3 favorite scenes.
For those who haven't guessed it already by my gasp of overly dramatized surprise, I totally forgot that we were going to do 3 favorite scenes, so I'm going to have to wing it here. Start me off, dude.
Okay, so my 3rd favorite scene is when Elaine wakes up the morning after and the lily is on the pillow.
Thinking of a lily in winter. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I just, for whatever reason, like, I love that scene. I talked about it back in Shadow Rising with Rand and Elaine, and I love this scene, like, just so great. Dude, yeah. I wish that Rand and Elaine had more opportunity for their relationship to, like, really bloom on the page. But my 2nd favorite scene, I mean, it has to be the daughter of the 9 Moons is my wife, you know. That whole sequence of events around the escape from Ebudar and the escape from the Terrasen Palace is just so bonkers and so much fun. And then, of course, the cleansing. Like, there's just no competition.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough. I did think of 3 while I was going through. A couple of them might be obvious, but one I think might kind of gone under the radar. We'll see. My first is the cleansing, as you just mentioned. Like, you know what? Actually, I'm going to save most of my thoughts for the cleansing for a couple minutes in the future as I'm wrapping up with my closing thoughts here.
Okay.
But the cleansing is 3rd. 2nd, Blue Carp Street. Blue Carp Street is awesome. Like, the whole parallel between Rand and Lan is how they're almost presented as equals here in their abilities. It's just so surreal. I want to double down on that. Endlessly cool to read. Definitely in my huge, thick paperback that's almost destroyed from my continuous reading of Winter's Heart, the thickest red part and the darkest in the line of the pages, because I've gone over it so many times. And my favorite scene, I think, in this entire book might be the scene where Elaine and Avienda bond each other as first sisters.
Oh, okay.
That was such a cool scene, in the ceremony and everything it meant for those 2 characters, everything it revealed about them to one another. It was just it was such an intimate moment, and I thought Jordan handled that perfectly. And and part of my admiration for his ability in that scene is how often I forget about it, and when I get to it, it surprises me and delights me every single time. So
okay, that's a good choice. It's a good choice.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I just have a couple of closing thoughts.
Go
you
for
already
it.
touched on Eben Hopwell, but I want to touch on Olivia a little more, and just the general dynamics of these little duels around the cleansing. I love that scene from Sindane's point of view where she runs into Olivia, and it's like, she's like, whoa, she's so powerful. Like,
hold up.
Yeah, she's like, that is impossible. It is impossible for somebody, like, you know, and she's like, oh, she's got to have an augur owl or something, you know, and then she throws a fireball and it unravels, and she's like, what the heck? And then Demandred, it's a similar thing with Demandred, where he runs into Flynn, and Flynn is so strong that it shocks Demandred, and Demandred's one of the most powerful channelers ever, you know, like, and then, but my absolute favorite is Agenor going out like a punk, getting nuked by one of the Black Ajah, and we're in her head, and she's like, oh, I can do this, it's fine, I'll be forgiven, it's just a dark friend. And then she kills one of the Forsaken.
and something that I actually forgot to write down, but occurred to me while I was listening to the audiobook for this portion. How surreal must it be for Arengar / Agenor? No, Arengar was Balthamel. What am I saying?
Yeah,
Agenor was
Osangar.
Osangar to be just watching his creations, these Trolloc and the Murdral, just destroying the world and being what primarily the light is focused on trying to struggle against. Like, and he's just there in Rand's company, just like, oh yeah, okay, yes, my Lord Dragon. No, my Lord Dragon. Until obviously he goes rogue later. But I don't know. It's just, it's cool. For context, I think it's really cool. that these are all like scientific creations from this man that Rand has no idea is masquerading as Osengar, Osengar masquerading as Corlin Dashiva.
Yeah.
That was just pretty cool.
Yeah.
As far as closing thoughts, were you done with your closing thoughts?
My last point is that just like I love this book. I think this book is unfairly maligned in the fandom.
Appreciate it.
It is so great, and unfortunately, we are done with it now, and we have to go back to Crossroads of Twilight, where we have to read Egwene.
Rip. But this is part of where I'm going with my closing thoughts here. And I wanted to really, really briefly discuss the cleansing once again. The cleansing is probably my second favorite sequence in the entirety of the Wheel of Time. Might not line up with what I said about my favorite scenes in this book, but you have to give a nod to the cleansing and its importance and its momentum and the way it changed the Wheel of Time. First being like it's my second favorite sequence in the entirety of the Wheel of Time. I mentioned that already. The first, I think, is probably the last battle sequence, even though, okay, cheap answer, I get it. But everything about this cleansing scene, pardon me, from the way it starts, like with Rand just almost casually whipping out the access keys and announcing he's going to up and cleanse Saidin of the taint. So the preparations at Shadow Logoth, the rapidly switching viewpoints across a multitude of different threads, they're all coming together in this single point in the series as Rand and Nynaeve, they're working literal wonders with the power of creation. Like, this is as Wheel of Time as it gets. Like, these are the moments that are defined, and they did define a whole generation of epic fantasy, and they shaped the future of it too. So, like, as I'm making notes for this podcast, like, these are the moments that are kind of difficult to form absolute opinions on because you want to do it justice. But all I can really say is that, like, this is Robert Jordan at his best, aside perhaps from Dumai's Wells, and maybe that sequence in The Shadow Rising, in the Tirangriel. But like, I can't think of, beside those possible two exceptions, of another peak that Jordan hit during his professional career as awesome as this was. Like, what a stellar ending. It was phenomenal in every sense of the word.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue the Shanshin campaign and Path of Daggers, but
I don't know if it's quite stacks up. It's damn good. But
you have a very good point here. Like, what the cleansing, what this chapter with the Choedan Call means, not just to this book, but to the series of the Wheel of Time and the genre of epic fantasy.
The genre itself
as a whole, like, this is a level of like epic that we rarely got to see before Robert Jordan came along, and
I'm glad to see what it inspired that's into entertaining us nowadays, and authors like Brandon Sanderson and this kind of spectacle.
Steven Erickson and Terry Goodkind, these like big,
cool.
big fat fantasies. The scale of things has gotten so big, and it's because of the success and the power of the Wheel of Time. So.
Agreed, 100%. I wish I had more beer to drink too, but I'm empty now. But I'm ready to talk about the beer that I brought on. You want to get into the final draft?
Let's do it. Okay,
I'll start us off. I brought to the table today a German black lager from Napa Knee Beer Company. I'll be honest, I'm having trouble distinguishing this from any, what my idea of a good porter or stout may be, save that this is perhaps a little bit on the sweeter side, not quite as roasty or bitter. Obviously, it's still got the chocolate, it's still got the coffee notes, and this is actually an homage to that Blue Carp Street sequence that I've been glowing about all episode, as a one-fingered salute to Manel Roshide, Rayfar Kizman, Peril Torval, and to an extent Corlin Dashiva. This brew is called Blacklist.
Nice.
As you can see, and it was delicious. It was delicious. What'd you bring?
Oh, I like it.
My man.
So I didn't have the best options for this one. I couldn't find something that was really perfect, but I had a couple of okay ones. And I ended up going with this guy. This is an India Pale Ale from Anchorage Brewing Company in Alaska.
Anchorage, we've had them before.
We have. And their Anchorage is very good. They're one of the better breweries in America.
Awesome.
This particular IPA is Pretty bright and fruity. I get a lot of like, mango, pineapple notes from it. It's got that what is become like a really modern hop profile. It's not that like super piney, bitter West Coast IPA kind of deal that got popularized a decade ago. But it is very tasty. I'm not the biggest IPA fan in the world. I'll drink them every once in a while, but this is one that if I see it again, I will probably buy it because it's that good. But it is called Patterns.
Patterns. Yeah. Okay, I can see the tie-in. Yeah. I appreciate it.
So it's not perfect, but it is Wheel of Time themed, and
yeah.
But I promise I'll make up for this lackluster entry. I have several lined up for the coming books that are going to be really damn good.
Good.
So,
I can't wait to see them.
I
can't wait to react to them.
Once again, I have a beer that I'm going to try to trade for that...
I wish everybody could see this mischievous look in your eye as you say this. There was
I will say this, like the beer that I want to trade for Towers of Midnight, one of the Towers of Midnight episodes. It's like one of the highest rated stouts in the world. Like on the secondary market, this thing goes for like hundreds of dollars.
Holy.
So I'm gonna have to dig deep in my cellar and see if I can get some bottles to. Like, I'll have to trade multiple bottles of beer to swing this.
Nice.
But,
very nice.
But if I can do it, I'll bring it on, because that would be a really special one.
Right on.
Yeah. So, that said, this has been episode 53, right?
I believe it is 53, yeah.
Oh my
Nailed
gosh,
it.
I'm like losing track. It's
No,
like
you
we
got
hit
it.
50, and then suddenly I, all the numbers just
51 would be
disappeared.
Path Daggers 2, 52 would be Winter's Heart Part 1, and 53 would be Winter's Heart Part 2.
I believe that's the
I
case.
think that's how we're doing it.
So yeah, if you're listening to this and there's a different number on the episode, we're wrong. Oh well.
It'll be a first time.
But yeah, next up we're going to be going back to Star Wars. Lauren and I are going to be finishing up the main Wraith Squadron sequence with Solo Command. So yeah, check that out if you're into Star Wars Expanded Universe stuff, and if you're not, maybe go check out the Wraith Squadron books. They're really good. As always, consider supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/inkingoutloud. We got a bunch of good benefits there. You can get access to our original short fiction and small episodes covering general fantasy topics. Or
Yeah, I'm up for this month, aren't I?
Other short fiction. Yeah, by the time you're listening to this, there should be a new bit of fiction from Rob on there.
Interesting.
But yeah, so check us out there. All that money goes straight toward Pat and Danny, who do a lot of the behind the scenes work to make this podcast run and allow us to keep going after 50 episodes. But as always, I am your host, Drew McCaffrey, and with me is my co-host, Rob Santos.
Yeah, buddy.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye, everybody.